My uncle gave everything to us, until my sister-in-law crossed the line. She called him a leech and told him to go get a life. He simply said, okay. Imagine the uncle who raised you like his own child, paid for your college, your wedding, even gave you a house to live in. Now imagine your wife looking him in the eye and calling him a leech. That one word destroyed everything, and what my uncle did next left the whole family speechless. We grew up with Uncle Jude always around. He was that one relative who never married, never left us, never built a life away from ours. For as long as I can remember, he was more than just uncle. He was our third parent. When my father worked long shifts and my mother was overwhelmed with 3 children, it was Uncle Jude who stepped in, helping with homework, cooking simple meals, driving us to school. We would sometimes ask him, "Uncle, why don't you get married? Don't you want a wife and children?" He'd just smile that soft, patient smile of his and say, "I don't need a family. I already have one. I have you 3. I only hope that when I grow old, you'll keep me company, just like your parents." At first, as kids, we didn't understand the depth of his words. But as we got older, it made sense. He poured his entire life into us. When my brother struggled with math in secondary school, Uncle Jude paid for extra lessons. When I got into college, it was Uncle Jude who handled tuition the semester my dad lost his job. He did the same for my eldest brother too. Between my parents and him, we never lacked the chance to study. In fact, when my eldest brother was preparing to get married, it was Uncle Jude who quietly paid for half of the wedding expenses. No one asked him, he simply handed over the money and said, "It's important the family shines on that day." That's the kind of man he was. Never loud about his sacrifices, but always steady. The house my brother and his wife eventually lived in wasn't theirs either. It belonged to Uncle Jude. He inherited it from our grandparents and chose not to rent it out or sell it. Instead, he gave it to them to live in, rent-free, so they could start life without too much financial weight, as he put it. That's why the day everything came crashing down felt like a betrayal wrapped in irony. It started like an ordinary Saturday. The family was gathered, chatting after lunch. My sister-in-law, Anita, had that sharpness to her voice she always carried when she was irritated. I can't remember what led to it exactly, but suddenly she turned her words like knives toward Uncle Jude. "Honestly, Jude," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Don't you think it's time you got your own family? You've been freeloading around our house for too long. Stop being a leech. Go get a wife or something." The silence that followed was heavy. I felt my blood rush to my face. Before anyone else could even react, I snapped, "Shut up, Anita." She whipped her head toward me, eyes blazing. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. If there's anyone who deserves respect in this house, it's Uncle Jude. Don't you dare call him a leech." My youngest brother chimed in immediately. "Exactly. If not for him, half of what we have today wouldn't even exist. Do you know who paid our school fees? Do you know who supported our family when things were rough? He's the reason you're living comfortably in that beautiful apartment in the first place without paying a dime." But Anita wasn't one to back down. Her pride swelled, and instead of apologizing, she turned her venom on me. "Oh, so now you think you're better than me because you want to lick your uncle's boots? You all are blind. He's a grown man, living off others, pretending he's some hero. He should get a life of his own instead of hiding under this family umbrella." The rage in me boiled over, but before I could say another word, my parents finally spoke. My mother's voice shook with disappointment. "Anita, that's enough. You don't know the origin of this family's story. You can't put your mouth where you don't understand. Jude has carried burdens you will never realize. If you can't show him gratitude, at least show him respect." My father, usually calm, added, "Calling my brother a leech in his own home? That's shameful. The room buzzed with tension. My youngest brother and I kept defending Uncle Jude, while Anita muttered under her breath. And through it all, Uncle Jude said nothing. He didn't yell, didn't defend himself, didn't even frown. He just sat there quietly, his eyes meeting mine for a moment. There was something in his look, tiredness, sadness, maybe even resignation. He stood up without a word and left to his house. We thought the silence was the end of it. But we were wrong. 2 days later, my brother came into our house holding a folded piece of paper. His face was pale. "You need to see this," he muttered. It was a formal letter. Uncle Jude had typed it out neatly. 2 months' notice to vacate the property. Since I have been informed that my presence in my brother's house is considered freeloading, I believe it is best you and your wife find your own space. Please also note that the vacation I had fully paid for in December is cancelled. The funds will be redirected to building the future I have been told I should pursue. I wish you both well. We were stunned. My brother's wife turned red, snatched the letter, and screamed, "He can't do this. This is cruelty." But the truth hung heavy in the air. That was his house, his money, his generosity. And she had insulted the very foundation that kept her secure. She tried to call him, screaming into the phone. "How could you do this? We already planned everything. We can't just move in 2 months, Jude. You can't cancel the vacation, it's unfair." But Uncle Jude's voice on the other end was calm, almost cold. "Anita, you told me to stop freeloading and get my own family. That's what I'm doing. I need the money I've been spending on you to take care of my future family. I suggest you make arrangements. Goodbye." And he hung up. For the first time, Anita looked powerless. She raged, she wept, but there was nothing to hold on to. After Uncle Jude's ultimatum and the move, things didn't go smoothly for Anita and my brother. At first, Anita strutted around like she was free of that leech, telling anyone who would listen that she and her husband were starting their independent life. But independence has a way of revealing who's really prepared and who's been carried. The next 2 months were filled with chaos, packing, arguments, whispered resentments. My brother tried to smooth things over, but Uncle Jude did not bend. He was polite, even kind, but utterly firm. When moving day finally arrived, Uncle Jude stood in the doorway watching them carry boxes. His face was unreadable, but when Anita glared at him, he spoke quietly. "Words are heavy, Anita. You can't take them back once you throw them. I hope one day you'll understand gratitude. Until then, I wish you both the best." Life moved on, but the ripple never stopped. A month later, Uncle Jude shocked us with an announcement: he was engaged. Turns out he had been quietly seeing a woman from his office, and now he was ready to start that future family Anita had mocked him about. As for my brother and his wife, 2 months into their new apartment, reality came knocking harder than rent collectors. The bills stacked up. The landlord, unlike Uncle Jude, had no patience for delays. The grocery money barely stretched a week, and Anita, who was used to vacations and comfort, suddenly found herself counting coins at the market. She started snapping at my brother, blaming him for not providing like a real man, even though she had been the one to bite the hand that fed them. My brother, tired and broken down, grew quieter by the day. Finally, when they missed 2 months' rent and the landlord threatened eviction, he picked up the phone. That evening, my parents got the call. I was in the living room with them when the phone rang. My brother's voice was shaky, almost defeated. "Dad, Mom, we can't keep up anymore. The rent, the bills, it's too much. We've decided we should come stay with you for now. Just until we get back on our feet." My parents exchanged a long look. My mother sighed heavily. "You can come, son. You're always welcome here." "But Anita," she paused, her voice turning firm. "She cannot come with you." There was silence on the line. Then my brother whispered, "What do you mean?" Dad cleared his throat. We've thought about this carefully. Anita insulted your uncle in ways that scarred this family. Your uncle still visits us often, and we will not allow him to feel uncomfortable in his own brother's house. We can't risk a repeat of that disrespect. She'll need to stay elsewhere. The silence stretched so long that I thought the call had dropped. Then my brother said, in a low, wounded voice, "She's my wife." Mom's tone softened, but she didn't bend. "And you're our son. We won't abandon you," but she crossed a line that can't be erased. This family has endured too much because of her words. If she wants to be a part of this family again, she'll have to show remorse, real remorse. Until then, she stays far away. When the call ended, the room felt heavy. I could tell my parents didn't make that decision lightly. They weren't cruel people. But they knew what was at stake. Uncle Jude, despite everything, still came around to check on us. He brought fruit, fixed things around the house, sometimes even stayed for dinner. He was still part of our daily lives. And the thought of Anita sitting across from him at the table again, pretending as if nothing had happened? It was unbearable. 2 weeks later, my brother showed up at our door with just a small bag. His eyes were red, his face weary. He hugged my mom tightly and muttered, "She's staying with her sister for now." We didn't ask more. We didn't need to. Uncle Jude came over that weekend. When he saw my brother, his expression softened but his words were plain. "I warned you, son. Words carry weight. I hope this teaches you both." My brother just nodded, shame etched across his face. But Anita? She didn't take the separation quietly. From what I heard through cousins, she was furious. She claimed my family had brainwashed my brother against her, that we were idolizing Uncle Jude too much. She didn't understand that it wasn't about idolizing him, it was about respecting the man who had carried us when no one else would. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. My brother slowly rebuilt himself under my parents' roof, working full-time, and saving half of his paycheck. Without Anita's constant nagging, he seemed lighter, more focused. Meanwhile, Anita stayed away, fuming in her pride. And Uncle Jude? He never gloated, never mocked. He just kept moving forward with his life. He soon got married after his engagement, and soon to be a father. His wife, his upcoming baby, his new chapter. Watching him smile at his wife's pregnant belly one Sunday afternoon, I realized, the man who was once called a leech had become the tree that bore fruit, while those who depended on him had withered without his shade. 4 months has passed since my brother returned to live with us while Anita stayed with her sister. Life in our house slowly found balance again. My brother was beginning to stabilize financially, Uncle Jude still visited often, bringing laughter and, sometimes, advice. But then, one evening, as we were finishing dinner, there was a knock at the door. I opened it and froze that it was Anita. She stood there, her hair slightly disheveled, her face weary, and her eyes carrying that same sharp pride I remembered, but behind it, there was something else. Desperation. "Good evening," she said stiffly, holding a small handbag. "I came to talk." My eyes narrowed but I let her in. The room went quiet as Anita sat at the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped tightly. My brother looked torn, half relieved and half ashamed. Anita cleared her throat and started, "I know I might have said things I shouldn't have. I was under pressure. I was stressed. But don't you think this has gone on long enough? Families fight. Families forgive." Her words hung in the air, rehearsed yet brittle. Mom crossed her arms. "Anita, do you realize what you said to Jude? Do you realize the weight of it? He gave his life to this family, sacrificed more than anyone, and you spat in his face, calling him a leech in his brother's house. That isn't just a fight. That's disrespect of the highest order." Anita shifted uncomfortably. I was angry. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. You all are acting like I committed a crime. My youngest brother cut in, his voice sharp. You did commit a crime, against gratitude. You showed the ugliest side of yourself. Do you think words don't matter? If it were up to me, you wouldn't even be sitting here. Her eyes flashed with anger, but she forced herself to swallow it. I'm trying here, all right? I came to apologize. She turned toward my brother. Honey, tell them. We can't keep living apart like this. I miss you. My brother looked down, unable to meet her eyes. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then, as if fate had planned it, the front door opened, and in walked Uncle Jude. He was carrying a small bag of fruit, humming under his breath, until he saw her. His steps froze. The smile faded from his face. For a long moment, the room was silent, the air thick. Anita stood up nervously, clutching her bag. Jude. I was just. But he raised his hand gently. His voice was calm, not angry, but final. Don't. If you came here to make peace, you should have started by admitting what you did without excuses. Instead, I hear justification, not remorse. You don't miss the family, you miss the comfort. And that's not the same thing. Her face crumpled, half with rage, half with humiliation. So what, you'll never forgive me? You'll let one word destroy everything? One word? Uncle Jude said softly. That one word revealed everything you thought of me. I gave years of my life, my money, my home, my support, and with one word, you showed me it meant nothing to you. Forgiveness isn't the issue. Trust is. And I don't trust that you won't spit on me again when it suits you. Anita's lips trembled. She looked around the room, as if searching for someone to take her side. But no one moved. Not my parents, not my brothers, not me. Finally, she snatched her bag and muttered, "Fine. If that's how it's going to be, then don't blame me for whatever happens next." And she stormed out. The door slammed, leaving a deep silence behind. My brother sat with his face buried in his hands. Uncle Jude simply placed the bag of fruit on the table and sighed. She hasn't learned yet, he said quietly. And until she does, she'll keep destroying everything around her. After that night at our house, when Uncle Jude refused her shallow apology, Anita disappeared again. My brother, though heartbroken, started accepting the reality that he and his wife were on very different paths. But Anita wasn't done. Instead of humbling herself, she doubled down. Within a week, whispers began to spread among extended relatives. Calls came in from cousins, aunties, and even a distant uncle, all saying the same thing. Why is the family treating Anita like an outcast? Why are you letting Jude come between your brother and his wife? At first, we were confused. Then one of our cousins let it slip. Anita had been calling people, twisting the story. She told them Uncle Jude was jealous of her because she had taken his place in the family. She painted herself as the victim of a bitter, unmarried uncle who wanted to control everyone's lives. She even claimed we were idolizing Jude while mistreating her. The lies spread fast. Some relatives, who didn't know the full history, began calling my parents, urging them to be fair and accept Anita back. Mom was furious. Can you imagine? After all Jude has done, she dares to slander him. She's shameless. Dad shook his head. She's clever. She knows many don't know the sacrifices Jude made. To them, it just looks like family drama. She's trying to turn the tide. But Anita didn't stop there. She tried another tactic. She called my brother directly one night, crying into the phone. I overheard part of the conversation from the hallway. They hate me, she sobbed. They'll never forgive me. Your uncle has poisoned everyone against me. But you're my husband. You promised to stand by me. Are you just going to let them throw me away? Her voice cracked, pulling at his guilt. If you loved me, you'd fight for me. My brother didn't respond much, just quiet sighs. He was torn between his loyalty to his wife and the truth he knew about her character. And then came her boldest move yet. One Sunday, during a large family gathering at my grandparents' old compound, Anita showed up uninvited. She walked in dressed to impress, smiling sweetly, greeting every elder with exaggerated respect. Auntie. Uncle. It's been too long. I've missed you all. People looked surprised, but most greeted her politely. Not everyone knew the full story. Then, in front of everyone, she stood up and said, I want to address something. There's been a misunderstanding in this family. I may have said some things out of anger, but I've been punished beyond reason. My husband and I have been separated because certain people want to control the family narrative. I only want peace. I only want to be accepted again. Gasps rippled through the room. Some relatives murmured in sympathy, others looked skeptical. My parents exchanged a glance, while my brother sank in his chair, humiliated. And then, like clockwork, Uncle Jude arrived. He walked in carrying his baby daughter, his wife beside him. The room went quiet as eyes darted between him and Anita. Anita seized the moment. Here he is, the great Jude. Tell them, Jude. Tell them why you've turned everyone against me. Why you've made me into a villain. Jude stood calmly, rocking his baby in his arms. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. Instead, he walked to the center of the room and addressed everyone. Family, I don't like drama. But since Anita has brought this to the open, let me make it plain. I have receipts, bank transfers, tuition records, hospital bills, even the wedding contribution. For years, I have given to this family without complaint. I gave her and my nephew a house to live in, free of charge. I paid for their vacation. And yet, in my own brother's house, she called me a leech. He pulled out his phone and showed a scanned copy of the eviction notice he had given them. The room went silent as relatives leaned in to read. This is not about me controlling anyone. This is about respect. I don't need praise, but I will not accept insults in my own home. If Anita wants forgiveness, she must start with truth, not lies. Until then, I have nothing more to say. He handed his baby to his wife and walked out without waiting for applause or pity. The room buzzed with murmurs. Slowly, the tide turned. Relatives who had been swayed by Anita's words now saw the weight of what she had done. Some shook their heads. Others whispered, so it's true. She insulted him after all he did. Anita's face turned pale. The sympathy she had hoped to gain slipped through her fingers like sand. That night, she tried once more to corner my brother, saying, "You should have defended me. You let him humiliate me." But my brother finally snapped. "No, Anita. You humiliated yourself. You tried to twist the story, but the truth came out. Stop blaming everyone else. Until you take responsibility, nothing will change." For the first time, Anita had no comeback. After the disastrous family gathering where Anita's lies were exposed, things between her and my brother crumbled completely. He tried for weeks to reason with her, to explain that if she wanted reconciliation, she had to start with humility and truth. But Anita had always been stubborn, pride was her fuel, and she couldn't put it down. Their phone calls turned into shouting matches. She accused him of choosing his family over his wife, while he reminded her that respect was the only thing that bound families together. Finally, one morning, my brother sat at the dining table with my parents, his face pale but determined. "I can't do it anymore," he said quietly. "I've tried, but Anita refuses to change. She's obsessed with blaming Uncle Jude for everything. I want a divorce." The silence that followed was heavy. My mom's eyes filled with tears, not because she disagreed, but because she knew the weight of that decision. My dad placed a hand on his shoulder. If that's your choice, son, then it's for your peace. A marriage without respect can't stand. When Anita got the divorce papers, she erupted like a storm. She called everyone she knew, screaming that my brother had been brainwashed by his family. But what shocked us most was what came next. Anita shifted her anger fully onto Uncle Jude. She began spreading rumors that his wife, sweet, kind-hearted Marianne, was only with him for his money. She claimed Marianne was a gold digger who trapped Jude into marriage so she could inherit his house and property. She told anyone who would listen that Jude's wife was jealous of her, that Miriam had turned the whole family against her because she couldn't stand competition. It was disgusting. At first, it was whispers in small circles. But Anita wasn't satisfied. She went online. She made subtle posts on social media, cryptic quotes about fake women who pretend to be saints, and men who think they found love but were played. People who didn't know the context thought she was just venting, but those close to us knew exactly who she was talking about. When Jude's wife found out, she was devastated. She cried in silence, asking Jude, "Why is she dragging me into this? I never did anything to her." Jude, calm as always, held her hand. "She's desperate, love. Don't let her bitterness poison your peace." But even he couldn't prevent the fallout. Some of Marianne's friends started asking uncomfortable questions. Gossip trickled into her workplace. It hurt. One Sunday, Anita made her boldest move yet. She confronted Marianne directly outside church. "You think you've won, don't you?" Anita sneered, her eyes blazing. "You think because you have Jude's child, you've replaced me in this family? Let me tell you, they'll turn on you too. You're no saint. You're a fraud." Marianne, gentle as she was, stood stunned. But before Anita could continue, my brother, yes, her own husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, appeared and cut her off. "That's enough, Anita." His voice shook with anger. "You've destroyed our marriage, and now you want to destroy Jude's too? What do you gain from this?" Anita turned on him, her pride wounded. "Oh, of course. Defend them. That's all you ever do. You and your family are blind. One day you'll see I was right." But my brother didn't flinch. He pulled Marianne behind him protectively. "No, Anita. The only thing I see clearly now is who you really are. And thank God I made the choice to walk away." People were watching. The shame on Anita's face was unmistakable, but still, she stomped off, muttering curses under her breath. By then, the divorce proceedings were underway. Anita dragged her feet, tried to make it messy, but my brother was firm. He wasn't fighting her, he was just letting go. Uncle Jude, despite everything, never retaliated. He refused to answer Anita's rumors, refused to engage in her bitterness. Instead, he poured himself deeper into his wife and child, showing by his actions that no amount of lies could shake their home. But Anita? She was slowly isolating herself. Relatives who once pitied her now avoided her. Friends grew tired of her endless rants. Even her own sister, who had housed her, eventually told her to find peace or move out. Her obsession with Jude's family had become her undoing. One evening, months later, I overheard my parents talking quietly. My mom said, "It's sad. If only Anita had been humble enough to apologize from the beginning, none of this would have happened. She had a home, a husband, and a family. But she threw it away." And my dad replied, "That's the danger of pride. It blinds you until you destroy yourself." Anita's life spiraled like water slipping down a drain. She had burned bridges everywhere, her in-laws wanted nothing to do with her, her own family was weary of her tantrums, and most of her friends had drifted away, embarrassed by her endless bitterness. She had once been a woman who boasted about vacations, expensive weddings, and living in a fine house. Now, she was moving from one small apartment to another, struggling to keep up with rent, and trying to hold on to a shaky job that barely covered her needs. But instead of reflecting and healing, Anita grew darker. She couldn't stop thinking about Jude and his wife. Every picture they posted online, every whisper she heard about their happy little family, sent her into fits of rage. It should have been me, she told anyone who would listen, though deep down she knew Jude had never once considered her anything more than his nephew's wife. One night, Anita did the unthinkable. She created fake social media accounts and started spreading vicious lies about Jude and Marianne. She claimed Jude was abusive, that Marianne had stolen money from her workplace, that their marriage was a sham built on deceit. It didn't take long for these lies to spread. Marianne broke down when her employer called her in for questioning after anonymous emails accused her of fraud. Though the truth came out and she was cleared, the stress weighed heavily on her. That was the final straw for Uncle Jude. For years, he had been patient, silent, turning the other cheek. But now, Anita was attacking his wife's dignity, his child's peace, and his family's name. Jude was a calm man, yes, but he was not weak. He hired a lawyer. Within weeks, Anita was served a formal cease and desist order from the court. The papers laid everything out. She was to immediately stop spreading false and defamatory statements about Jude and Marianne. She was forbidden from harassing or contacting them in person, by phone, or online. Any further action would lead to a lawsuit for defamation and harassment, with damages attached. When Anita read the papers, she laughed bitterly at first. They think they can silence me? Me, she scoffed to herself. But the laughter quickly turned to panic. She had no money to fight a legal case. No lawyer would take her side for free. She knew if she pushed further, she could lose everything, even face jail time. The walls closed in. Her employer, weary of her constant personal scandals, gave her a warning: one more distraction, Anita, and you're out. Her phone barely rang anymore, except for debt collectors. At night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her head. How had she gone from living in a beautiful home with a husband who loved her, to this? The answer was simple: pride. Pride and obsession. But Anita wasn't ready to admit that. Not yet. In her final act of desperation, she tried once more to claw her way back into the family. She called my brother late at night, sobbing. "Please, tell them to lift the order. Tell Jude I'm sorry. I don't want to go to court. I don't want to be alone. Please." My brother listened quietly, but his voice was steady when he replied. "Anita, you had every chance. Uncle Jude treated you like family, and you spat in his face. Marianne never wronged you, but you dragged her name through the mud. You pushed me away, you insulted my parents, and you tried to destroy everything we had. Now you're facing the consequences." Her sobbing grew louder. "So that's it? You're just going to leave me to suffer?" "No," he said firmly. "You left yourself to suffer. We only stepped back to protect our peace. Until you truly change, Anita, there's nothing left for you here." And with that, he hung up. Days later, Anita showed up at our parents' porch, thin and worn, begging to be heard. But my dad didn't even open the door. He spoke from behind the door. "Anita, go and rebuild your life. We cannot help you until you help yourself. This house is a place of peace, and you are not ready to bring peace." She staggered away, humiliated, finally realizing she had no more moves left. The cease and desist stood firm. No more lies, no more harassment. Her world grew quiet, not the peaceful kind, but the suffocating kind that comes when everyone has turned their back. Anita had truly hit rock bottom. Anita disappeared from the center of everyone's lives. At first, she tried to fight it, showing up at extended family events uninvited, posting cryptic messages online, and trying to bait Jude or my brother into reacting. But no one gave her the satisfaction. It was as if she'd become a ghost. The family moved on. Uncle Jude and Miriam flourished, their marriage grew stronger with every challenge, their child was thriving, and Jude even expanded his business, finally building the family home he had dreamed of. My brother, though scarred by the failed marriage, found peace in focusing on his career and slowly rebuilding himself. My parents, relieved of the constant tension, hosted gatherings filled with laughter again. But Anita? She lingered in the shadows. Every so often, whispers of her surfaced. Someone would say they'd seen her in town, looking worn and restless, muttering to herself. A cousin mentioned that she had been overheard complaining about how they ruined her life, and how one day, karma would come for them. But it never did. The truth was, Anita had ruined herself. She lived in small, rented rooms, moving often because she couldn't keep up with rent. The friends she had left avoided her, tired of her bitterness. Family functions no longer invited her name. Even her own relatives, who once tried to defend her, kept their distance. At night, when she scrolled through social media, she saw pictures of Jude and Marianne smiling, my brother laughing with us, my parents holding Jude's children. The joy radiated from those photos, and it burned her. She wanted to comment. To throw venom. To remind everyone of her pain. But the cease and desist order stood like a wall. One wrong move, and she knew she'd be dragged into court again, this time with real consequences she couldn't afford. So she stayed silent. She watched from the shadows, her envy eating her alive, her bitterness chaining her to misery. She could not admit she was wrong, and that pride became her prison. Uncle Jude once said something I'll never forget. It was at a quiet family dinner, months after Anita had vanished from our lives. He looked around the table, at Marianne smiling, at my parents laughing, at us kids talking over each other, and said softly, "Peace is the greatest wealth. And sometimes, to protect it, you have to let people stay in their shadows." We all knew who he meant. And that was the final chapter of Anita's story. She chose pride, and pride chose loneliness. She became a shadow to our family's light, always watching, never belonging. Time went on, and my family's life with Uncle Jude at the heart of it thrived in peace and blossomed in ways she would never be part of. Weddings were celebrated, babies were born, milestones were achieved. The end. Thanks for watching, please subscribe.